I still remember the exact moment my world collapsed around me. It was during a family dinner I had spent hours preparing, hoping to impress my parents with my new kitchen renovation. The pot roast was perfect, the wine poured, when my mother casually dropped the bomb. "Darlene, Travis and his fiancée will need your master bedroom when they move in next month." I froze, fork suspended in midair, certain I had misheard. When I stammered that this was my house, my mortgage, my mother simply shrugged and said the words that still echo in my mind. "It's not your house. Never was." My father nodded in agreement, as if I should have known all along. I had worked incredibly hard for my home. For 5 years straight after college, I pulled 70-hour weeks at Johnson & Bailey Accounting, taking every overtime opportunity, foregoing vacations, and living in a tiny studio apartment to save for a down payment. While my friends were traveling or pursuing advanced degrees, I was living on ramen and tracking every penny in my budget spreadsheet. My dream of homeownership kept me going through exhaustion and self-doubt. When I finally found my house, I knew immediately it was the one. A charming 3-bedroom craftsman-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood with original hardwood floors and a bay window in the living room that flooded the space with morning light. The backyard was modest, but had enough space for the garden I had always wanted to grow. The master bedroom had an ensuite bathroom that, while outdated, had potential for renovation. I remember walking through the empty rooms, mentally placing furniture, imagining holiday gatherings, feeling for the first time that I was building something permanent for myself. Securing the mortgage had been nerve-wracking. Though my credit was excellent, I was still young for a homeowner at 27, and the bank scrutinized every aspect of my finances. I had to provide letter after letter explaining deposits and withdrawals. When I finally signed the closing papers, I cried with relief and pride. I had done what had seemed impossible. The first year was tight financially. Between the mortgage payments, property taxes, and unexpected repairs, I was living paycheck to paycheck again. I learned to fix a leaky faucet from YouTube tutorials and painted every room myself to save on costs. Each improvement, no matter how small, filled me with a sense of accomplishment. This was mine. I had earned it. My parents, Linda and Robert, had seemed proud at first. They brought a houseplant as a housewarming gift and helped me move my meager belongings from the studio apartment. My mother had even commented on how responsible I was compared to my younger brother Travis, though she quickly added, "But he's pursuing his passion, which takes courage too." Travis and I had always had a complicated relationship. 4 years younger than me, he had been the focus of our parents' attention from the moment he showed artistic talent in elementary school. While I was expected to maintain perfect grades, hold part-time jobs, and manage my own college applications, Travis was encouraged to focus exclusively on his art. Our parents paid for his art school tuition in full while I worked through my accounting degree, taking 6 years instead of 4 to finish because I could only attend part-time while working. I never resented Travis for his talents. He was genuinely gifted, creating stunning abstract paintings that had been featured in small, local galleries. What frustrated me was the double standard. When I struggled, it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. When Travis struggled, it was because artists need time to find their path. His missed deadlines were evidence of his creative temperament. My organizational skills were boring but expected. Despite this, I loved my family. I wanted their approval and worked constantly to earn it. When I invited them over for dinner that fateful evening, I was excited to show them the kitchen renovation I had saved for over 2 years to complete. I had replaced the laminate countertops with quartz-installed new cabinet fronts and splurged on a farmhouse sink I had coveted since seeing it in a home magazine. I spent the entire day preparing my mother's favorite pot roast recipe, setting the table with the good dishes I rarely used, and even buying flowers for a centerpiece. The dinner started pleasantly enough. My parents complimented the food, though my mother noted the carrots were slightly overdone. They told me about their plans for a cruise to Alaska next summer, and I shared news about my recent promotion at work. Then, as I was serving coffee and the berry cobbler I had baked, my mother cleared her throat. "Travis has some exciting news," she said, beaming. "He and Megan are getting married." I was genuinely surprised. Travis had only been dating Megan for about 3 months. She was a photographer he had met at an art exhibition, and while I had only met her once, briefly she seemed nice enough. Wow, that's fast. But congratulations, I'll have to call him tomorrow. Actually, my father interjected, they're looking for a place to live. Apartments in the arts district are so expensive now. I nodded, not yet seeing where this was heading. The rental market is tough everywhere. My mother reached across the table and patted my hand. Darlene, we've been thinking. You have this big house all to yourself. Travis and Megan will need space as they start their life together. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. Are you suggesting they rent my spare bedroom? I use one as an office, but the other one could. No, honey, my mother interrupted, her voice sweet but firm. Travis is used to having his space. They'll need the master bedroom. I stared at her, certain I had misunderstood. My bedroom. But where would I sleep? You could take one of the smaller bedrooms, my father said matter-of-factly. It would only be until they get on their feet. A year, maybe 2 at most. That was when I pointed out the obvious. This was my house purchased with my money, where I paid the mortgage every month. And that was when my mother uttered those cutting words. It's not your house. Never was. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I remember my hands shaking as I cleared the dishes, my mother continuing to lay out her plan, as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. Travis and Megan would move in next month. They would need space in the garage for their art supplies. The smaller bedroom I used as an office would need to be cleared out for their studio. They might want to repaint some rooms to better showcase their artwork when clients visited. By the time my parents left, the pride I had felt in my home, in my accomplishments, had been replaced by a hollow feeling of disbelief. How had a dinner, meant to celebrate my independence, turned into a plan to take it all away? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's voice. It's not your house. Never was. What did she even mean by that? I had the mortgage statements, the deed, the property tax bills, all in my name alone. The only financial assistance my parents had provided was a $4,000 loan to cover some unexpected closing costs, which I had repaid within 6 months with interest. By morning, my confusion had hardened into anger. I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years and spent the day pacing my house trying to understand what had happened. Around noon, I called my best friend Jamie. They said what? Jamie's voice rose in disbelief as I recounted the previous night's dinner. Please tell me you told them to pound sand. I kind of just froze, I admitted. It was so unexpected. And then I started wondering if I was being selfish. They made it sound like I'm hoarding all this space while Travis and Megan have nowhere to go. Darlene, Jamie said firmly, you are not being selfish for wanting to sleep in your own bedroom in your own house that you pay for. That's not selfish. That's called being an adult with boundaries. And where do they get off saying it's not your house? Are they on the deed or mortgage? No, I confirmed. Not at all. I mean, they loaned me some money for closing costs years ago, but I paid them back right away. Then it's 100% your house, Jamie said. And if Travis and his girlfriend, fiancée primée, corrected, whatever. If they need a place to stay, they can take the guest room or find their own place like every other adult on the planet. Your parents are being ridiculous. Hearing Jamie say it out loud made me feel more confident in my own reaction. I was not being unreasonable. Just as I was about to thank her and hang up, my phone beeped with an incoming call. Travis. I should take this, I told Jamie. It's him now. Stand your ground, Jamie advised before disconnecting. I took a deep breath and accepted Travis's call. Hey, sis. His voice was cheerful, as if nothing unusual was happening. Did Mom and Dad tell you the good news? Megan and I are getting married? Yes, congratulations, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. That's very sudden. When you know, he replied airily. Anyway, they said they talked to you about us moving in next month. I just wanted to say thanks, it's really going to help us out. Megan's already planning how to arrange our furniture in the master suite. The casual entitlement in his voice reignited my anger. Actually, Travis, we need to talk about that. I didn't agree to anything last night. There was a pause. But Mom said you were on board. She said you understood this was a family house. It's not a family house, I said firmly. It's my house. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. And I'm not giving up my bedroom. Travis's tone changed immediately. Wow. Selfish. Much Megan and I are trying to start our lives together. And we need the space. It's not like you have anyone to share your bedroom with. The jab stung, but I held firm. My relationship status has nothing to do with this. If you and Megan need a place to stay temporarily, I'm willing to discuss you using the guest room, but the master bedroom is mine. The guest room is tiny, Travis complained. And we need space for a nursery too. That caught me off guard. A nursery is Megan. No, not yet, Travis said quickly. But we're planning to start trying right away. Mom thinks we should have kids while we're young. Of course she did. My mother had been dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about grandchildren for years, always reminding me that my biological clock was ticking, while assuring me that some men don't mind a woman being established in her career first. Travis, I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not giving up my bedroom, and I'm not converting my home office into a nursery for a baby that doesn't exist yet. The conversation devolved from there. Travis accused me of always being the uptight rule follower who never understood artistic expression or family loyalty. I found myself falling into our childhood dynamic defensive and desperate for approval before I finally managed to end the call by saying I needed to think about everything. But I wasn't really considering giving in. Instead, I spent the afternoon researching tenant rights in my state, just in case my parents and Travis tried to move in against my wishes. What I found was reassuring, as the sole owner I had the legal right to determine who lived in my home. Without a formal lease agreement, any occupants would be considered guests at my discretion. I was still sorting through this information when my phone buzzed with a notification. One of my cousins had tagged me in a social media post. Curious, I opened the app and felt my stomach drop. There was Travis and Megan grinning widely standing in front of my house. The caption read, "Congratulations to the engaged couple on their new place. Can't wait to see how you transform it with your artistic touch." The comment section was filled with relatives and friends congratulating them, asking about moving dates and offering to help them settle in. One comment from my aunt caught my eye. So generous of Linda and Robert to help the young couple get started. Family. Taking care of family. I felt sick. Not only were Travis and Megan telling everyone they were moving into their new place, but somehow my parents were getting credit for being generous with my house. There wasn't a single mention that the home belonged to me, or that I would still be living there. I immediately called Travis back, but the call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text message instead. "We need to talk. Now. You cannot tell people you're moving into your new place when it's my house, and I haven't even agreed to have you as guests." His response came an hour later. "Don't worry so much. Mom and Dad have a plan. They'll explain everything tomorrow." A plan. What plan? This was my house, my life, my decision. Yet somehow my family was making arrangements about my living situation without my input or consent. The realization was both infuriating and painfully familiar. This was how it had always been Travis's needs and wants. Taking precedence, my parents making decisions that favored him and me expected to accommodate without complaint. But I wasn't a child anymore, and this wasn't a matter of who got the bigger slice of birthday cake or more attention at a school recital. This was my home purchased with years of hard work and sacrifice. For the first time in my life, I would need to stand firmly against my family's expectations, even if it meant disappointing them. A week passed, with minimal communication from my family. I tried calling my parents several times, but they seemed to be avoiding me. My mother sent a few vague text messages about working things out as a family, but provided no real clarification about what they meant by claiming my house never was mine. I focused on work, trying to distract myself from the situation, but the uncertainty gnawed at me constantly. Then came Wednesday. I returned home from a particularly stressful day at the office, looking forward to a quiet evening with a glass of wine and the new mystery novel I had been saving for a tough day. As I turned onto my street, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in my driveway. My heart sank when I recognized it as my father's new SUV. I parked on the street and approached my own front door with apprehension. Before I could even insert my key, the door swung open, revealing my mother's smiling face. "There you are, we were wondering when you'd get home." I stepped inside, stunned, to find my living room filled with cardboard boxes. My father was measuring the wall where my bookshelf stood, while Travis sat on my couch feet propped on my coffee table scrolling through his phone. "What is going on here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "How did you get in?" My mother jingled a set of keys. "We had copies made. Your father remembered you gave him a spare when you first moved in." I had given them a spare key for emergencies only, which I had made clear at the time. Having them make additional copies without my permission felt like a violation. "Those boxes," I pointed to the stack near the entryway. "What are they?" "Just some of Travis and Megan's things," my father replied, not looking up from his measuring tape. "They needed to get a head start on moving since they have to be out of their apartment by the end of the month." "And you didn't think to ask me first?" My voice was rising now despite my efforts to stay calm. "Ask you what?" My mother looked genuinely confused. "If your brother could store a few boxes in your garage, Darlene. We raised you in our house for 18 years. We never asked you for rent or to justify your existence there." The comparison was so absurd I almost laughed. "I was a child. You were legally responsible for housing me. This is completely different." Travis finally looked up from his phone. "Why are you being so difficult about this?" "It's just stuff in the garage for now." "For now," I echoed. "Well, obviously we'll need to start moving furniture in soon," Travis said, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. "Megan's been collecting ideas for how we want to renovate the master bathroom. That shower stall is way too small." "Renovate my bathroom?" I felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality where nothing made sense. No one is renovating anything in my house, and no one is moving in without my permission, which I have not given. My father set down his measuring tape with a sigh. "Darlene, you're being melodramatic. This is what families do. They help each other. Your brother needs a place to live. Then he can rent an apartment like I did, before I could afford to buy a house. Apartments in the arts district are insanely expensive," Travis countered. "And we need space for our creative work. Megan is building her photography portfolio, and I'm preparing for a new exhibition." Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and Megan walked in without knocking. She was carrying a large poster board which she propped against the wall. "Oh, hi, Darlene," she said casually, as if entering someone else's home without permission was perfectly normal. "I brought the mood board for our bedroom design. What do you think about removing that built-in wardrobe? It's not really our style." I stared at her then at the mood board covered with color swatches and furniture cutouts for my bedroom, the room where I had carefully selected each piece, creating a sanctuary that reflected my personal taste and provided comfort after long work days. "This has gone far enough," I said, my voice shaking. "Everyone needs to leave. Now, take those boxes with you. No one is moving in here, and absolutely no one is remodeling my bedroom or bathroom." My mother's face hardened. "You've always been so selfish, Darlene. Always thinking about yourself first instead of what the family needs." "What the family needs?" I repeated incredulously. "What about what I need? This is my home. I worked for it. I pay for it. I maintain it." "With the foundation we provided," my father interjected. "Don't forget we helped with the closing costs, which I repaid in full with interest years ago," I countered. Travis stood up, walking over to put his arm around Megan. "Look, I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. It's not like you need all this space just for yourself. Megan and I are starting a family. We need the room more than you do." That's not for you to decide, I was nearly shouting now, something I rarely did. My mother put her hands on her hips. I think you're being dramatic because you're jealous. Travis has found someone to build a life with while you're still alone. We understand, honey, but taking it out on your brother isn't fair. The unfairness of her statement was breathtaking. I wasn't the one trying to take over someone else's home, yet somehow I was being portrayed as the unreasonable one. I need everyone to leave, I repeated, moving to open the front door. Take the boxes. Take your keys. And don't come back. Unless you're invited. You can't be serious, my father said, looking shocked. We're family. Family respects boundaries, I replied. Please leave. After much grumbling and several more jabs about my selfishness, they finally departed, though they left the boxes behind, claiming they wouldn't fit in their vehicles. As I closed the door behind them, I leaned against it, exhausted and shaken. That evening, I received a phone call from my Aunt Susan, my father's sister, asking if I was coming to Sunday dinner. When I explained I probably wouldn't attend given the current situation, she sounded confused. What situation? Is everything okay? I hesitated, not wanting to air family drama, but decided honesty was necessary. Mom and Dad seem to think Travis and Megan should move into my house and take over my master bedroom. They've been telling people it's a done deal, even though I never agreed to it. There was a long pause before Aunt Susan spoke again. Darlene, your parents told everyone that they helped you buy that house. That it's really a family investment property. My stomach dropped. What? That's not true at all. I bought this house entirely on my own. They had nothing to do with it. That's not what they've been saying, Aunt Susan replied carefully. They've been telling the family that they provided a significant down payment, and that they've always intended for both you and Travis to benefit from the property. The revelation was like a physical blow. My parents hadn't just been planning to move Travis into my home, they had been systematically undermining my achievement, rewriting the narrative of my homeownership to make it seem like their generosity rather than my hard work. That's a lie, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I have all the documentation showing I purchased this house myself. I have bank statements proving where the down payment came from, my savings account built up over years of overtime and careful budgeting. Aunt Susan sighed. I had a feeling something wasn't right about their story. It reminded me too much of how they handled things when we were younger. That comment caught my attention. What do you mean? Your father has always had a talent for reshaping reality to fit his preferred narrative, she explained. When we were kids, anything that was his was exclusively his, but anything that was mine was somehow family property that he had equal claim to. Your mother enables it. And they've always favored Travis the same way our parents favored your father. The conversation with Aunt Susan continued for over an hour, revealing patterns of behavior I had normalized but were actually deeply problematic. By the time we hung up, I felt both more alone and more resolved. My family's behavior wasn't just about a bedroom, it was about control, about diminishing my achievements, and about maintaining the family dynamic where Travis received while I sacrificed. I spent the rest of the evening researching security systems and calling locksmiths. By the next day, I had new locks installed on all exterior doors and a basic security camera for my front porch. I knew these measures might seem extreme, but the discovery that my parents had been lying about their role in my homeownership made me realize this situation was more serious than I had initially thought. This was no longer just about standing up for myself. In the moment, it was about protecting what I had built, and finally breaking the pattern of always yielding to Travis's needs at the expense of my own. The new locks and security camera provided some peace of mind, but I knew the confrontation with my family was far from over. I reached out to my friend Mark, who worked as a real estate attorney, and explained the situation. He agreed to meet me for coffee that Saturday to discuss my options. Legally, you're on solid ground, Mark assured me after reviewing the documentation I brought. The house is solely in your name. There's no co-ownership, no lien, nothing that would give your parents or brother any legal claim to the property, so they can't force me to let them move in, I confirmed. Absolutely not. You have the right to decide who lives in your home. If they move in without your permission, that would technically be trespassing. What about the boxes they've already left in my garage? Mark frowned. That's trickier. Technically, they left those items with your knowledge, even if it wasn't with your enthusiastic consent. I'd recommend formally requesting in writing that they remove their belongings by a specific date. That creates a paper trail if things escalate further. I nodded, taking notes. And if they try to claim they contributed to buying the house? Your documentation clearly shows otherwise, Mark said firmly. The mortgage is in your name alone. The down payment came from your account and there's no record of any significant financial contribution from them that wasn't repaid. They have no legal claim. Armed with this information, I felt more confident when my doorbell rang the next morning. The security camera showed my parents and Travis standing on the porch looking irritated. I took a deep breath before opening the door. You changed the locks. My father's face was flushed with anger. You locked your family out of the house. Yes, I said, simply standing in the doorway rather than inviting them in. After you made copies of my key without permission and moved items into my home without asking, I felt I needed to secure my property. Your property? My mother scoffed. This house has always been meant as a family investment. That's not true, I replied calmly. I've consulted with an attorney. This house is legally mine alone. I purchased it with my own money. I maintain it with my own money. And I have sole discretion over who lives here. Travis pushed forward. So you're really going to leave us homeless? Megan's pregnant, Darlene. The revelation hit me hard. I hadn't known Megan was expecting, and for a moment, I felt a familiar wave of guilt. But then I remembered everything that had happened, how they had tried to manipulate and mislead me. Congratulations on the baby, I said sincerely. But that doesn't change the fact that this is my house. If you need a place to stay temporarily, we can discuss you using the guest room and contributing to household expenses. But I'm not giving up my bedroom, and I'm certainly not allowing any renovations. Contributing, Travis looked offended. We're family. You can't charge family rent. Actually, I can, I stood firm. And I should if you're living here and using utilities I pay for. My mother placed a hand on Travis's arm. We need to tell her everything, honey. Travis hesitated, then sighed. Fine. The truth is, we got evicted from our apartment. We're 3 months behind on rent. And the landlord won't give us any more extensions. Why are you behind on rent? I asked. I've been focusing on my art. Travis explained defensively. Sales have been slow, and Megan had to cut back on her photography work because of morning sickness. We thought we'd have more time to catch up, but the landlord served us eviction papers last week. I felt a mix of sympathy and frustration. This was exactly the pattern that had played out throughout our childhood. Travis making irresponsible choices, and everyone else expected to accommodate them. I'm sorry you're in this situation, I said carefully. But it doesn't mean I have to give up my bedroom or let you take over my house. If you want to stay in the guest room temporarily, with emphasis on temporarily, we can work something out. But there will be conditions. After some negotiation, we reached a compromise. Travis and Megan could stay in the guest room for up to 3 months. They would contribute $300 monthly toward utilities, respect my privacy, and not make any changes to the house without my explicit permission. My parents seemed unhappy with the arrangement, but reluctantly agreed it was better than their children being completely at odds. We're just trying to help both our children, my mother said as they were leaving. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions about how to distribute family resources. The phrasing bothered me. My house was not a family resource to be distributed, but I let it go. Relieved to have reached some sort of agreement, that evening I called Jamie to update her on the situation. I don't trust them, she said bluntly after hearing about the compromise. They've already shown they don't respect your boundaries. What's to stop them from taking advantage once they're living with you? The formal agreement we wrote up, I replied, though I shared her concerns. And the fact that I'm going into this with eyes wide open. I'm not going to let them manipulate me anymore. I hope you're right, Jamie said. Just be careful. And remember, you can always call me if things get weird. 3 days later, Travis and Megan officially moved in with what seemed like far more belongings than should fit in a temporary single-room living arrangement. I helped them arrange the guest room as efficiently as possible, trying to maintain a positive attitude despite my reservations. The first week went relatively smoothly. Travis and Megan kept mostly to themselves, and while they occasionally left dishes in the sink or lights on in empty rooms, there were no major issues. I began to think perhaps Jamie's concerns had been overblown. Then the following weekend, I had a regional accounting conference in Phoenix. I would be away for 3 days, my first trip since Travis and Megan had moved in. I left detailed instructions about house rules, emergency contacts, and a reminder about not making any changes to the property. "We'll take good care of everything," Megan promised. "Have a good trip." I returned late Sunday night, exhausted from travel and networking, but pleased with the professional connections I had made. As I dragged my suitcase through the front door, I noticed something odd. The living room furniture had been rearranged, and several of my decorative items were missing. Frowning, I moved toward the kitchen, where I found unfamiliar appliances on the counter and my organized pantry completely restructured. But the real shock came when I headed upstairs to my bedroom. The door to the master suite was open, and as I approached, I could hear Travis and Megan talking inside. I froze in the hallway, then slowly pushed the door wider. My bedroom had been completely transformed. My furniture was gone, replaced by Travis and Megan's bohemian-style bed and dresser. The walls, which had been a soothing sage green, were now covered with bright, abstract murals. My carefully organized closet had been emptied, and art supplies were stacked against one wall. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice breaking with shock. Travis and Megan turned startled by my sudden appearance. "Darlene, you're back early," Travis said, looking guilty. "I'm right on time, actually," I replied coldly. "What have you done to my bedroom? Where are my things?" Megan stepped forward, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. "We moved your stuff to the office. It's all there, safe and sound. We just thought with the baby coming, it made more sense for us to use this room. It's bigger, and the attached bathroom is more convenient for my morning sickness." I was speechless with rage and disbelief. In just 3 days, they had completely violated our agreement and taken over my personal space without permission. "Mom and Dad helped us move everything," Travis added, as if that somehow legitimized their actions. "They thought you'd understand once you saw how much better this arrangement works for everyone." "Everyone," I repeated. "You mean better for you? Where exactly am I supposed to sleep now?" "In the office," Travis said, gesturing down the hall. "We set up your bed in there. It's cozy." I stormed to what had been my home office and found it crammed with my bedroom furniture. My desk and filing cabinets had been pushed into a corner, making the room feel claustrophobic and disorganized. Several of my personal items appeared damaged from the hasty move. When I returned to the master bedroom, my parents had appeared in the doorway, apparently having let themselves in with another copy of the key. "Before you overreact," my mother began, "just consider how much sense this makes. Travis and Megan need more space with the baby coming. You're hardly ever home anyway with your work schedule. And the office is plenty big enough for one person. You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "No right at all to come into my house while I was away and rearrange everything without my permission. This is a complete violation of my privacy and our agreement." "Now, Darlene," my father said in the condescending tone he always used when he thought I was being unreasonable, "family has to be flexible. Travis has real needs here. You've always had everything handed to you while Travis struggles with real problems." The statement was so divorced from reality that I almost laughed. Everything handed to me. I worked through college. I saved for years to buy this house. I have never asked any of you for anything I didn't pay back promptly. Your career just fell into your lap," Travis argued. "Some of us are pursuing more challenging paths that don't come with guaranteed paychecks. My career didn't fall into my lap," I shot back. "I worked hard for my degree while you were getting a free ride through art school. I put in overtime and weekends to prove myself at my firm. Nothing was handed to me." The argument escalated, with my parents taking Travis's side at every turn. When I pointed out that they had violated our written agreement, My mother dismissed it as just a formality that family shouldn't need. As the tension reached a breaking point, Megan suddenly suggested, "What if we all shared ownership of the house? You know, make it official that it's a family property. Then we could all have equal say in how the space is used." I stared at her in disbelief. Share ownership of the house that I bought, the house I pay the mortgage on every month, the house I've put thousands of dollars into maintaining and improving. Why would I do that? Because family takes care of each other, my mother said, as if it were obvious. And really it would just be formalizing what we've always understood, that this house is for both our children's benefit. I was too angry and exhausted to continue the argument that night. I told them all to leave me alone, and locked myself in the small office, now my apparent bedroom. As I sat on the edge of my displaced bed, I noticed something else. My credit card statement was lying on the desk, open to a page showing several large charges from baby boutiques and furniture stores. Looking more closely, I realized with horror that Travis or Megan had been using my credit card without permission. There were thousands of dollars in charges for baby furniture, maternity clothes, and nursery decorations, all made during the weekend I was away. This wasn't just about a bedroom anymore. This was theft. Plain and simple. My family had crossed every conceivable boundary, violating my trust, my home, and now my finances. As I sat surrounded by the chaos they had created, I realized Jamie had been right all along. They had never intended to respect the compromise we reached. They had simply been waiting for an opportunity to take what they wanted. With shaking hands, I called the credit card company to report the unauthorized charges and request a new card. Then I texted Mark asking for an urgent meeting the next day. This had gone beyond a family disagreement. I needed legal protection from the people who should have been supporting me, not exploiting me. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and met Mark at his office. I brought documentation of everything: the original agreement with Travis and Megan, photos of my rearranged house, the credit card statement showing unauthorized charges, and text messages from my family dismissing my concerns. Mark's expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the evidence. "Darlene, this is more serious than I initially thought. The unauthorized use of your credit card is credit card fraud, a criminal offense. And the way they've taken over your home borders on constructive eviction, forcing you out of your own property." "What are my options?" I asked, feeling both defeated and determined. "First, you need to formally evict Travis and Megan," Mark advised. "Given the circumstances, including their violation of your agreement and the credit card fraud, we have grounds for an expedited eviction. Second, you should file a police report about the credit card charges. It creates an official record and might be necessary for your credit card company to fully refund the fraudulent charges." The thought of filing a police report against my own brother made my stomach churn, but I nodded. "What about my parents?" "That's trickier," Mark admitted. "They don't live there, but they clearly have access and have been facilitating this situation. I'd recommend sending them a formal cease and desist letter prohibiting them from entering your property without explicit invitation. They'll see all of this as a betrayal," I said softly. "They'll say, 'I'm tearing the family apart.'" Mark's expression softened. "Darlene, from what you've told me, they've been manipulating and taking advantage of you for years. Standing up for yourself isn't betrayal. It's self-preservation. And frankly, a family that treats one member as merely a resource for another isn't much of a family at all." His words hit hard, but I knew he was right. I spent the rest of the day following Mark's advice, filing a police report about the credit card fraud, starting the eviction process, and drafting a cease and desist letter to my parents. Each step was painful, but necessary. When I returned home that evening, I found all four of them, Travis, Megan, and my parents, sitting in my living room as if staging an intervention. "We need to talk," my father began authoritatively. "This situation has gotten out of hand." "I agree," I said calmly, placing my bag on the counter. "That's why I've taken legal steps today, to address it." That caught them off guard. "Legal steps," my mother repeated. "What are you talking about?" "I filed a police report about the unauthorized use of my credit card. I stated. I've also begun the formal eviction process for Travis and Megan. And I've had a cease and desist letter prepared for you and Dad prohibiting you from entering my property without invitation. The room erupted in outrage. Travis jumped to his feet, accusing me of overreacting and being heartless toward his pregnant fiancée. My father called me ungrateful and disrespectful. My mother began to cry, saying she couldn't believe her own daughter would treat family this way. I let them vent for several minutes before responding. I gave Travis and Megan a chance to stay here under reasonable conditions, which they violated the moment I left town. You helped them take over my bedroom without permission, damaged my belongings in the process, and then Travis or Megan used my credit card without authorization to buy thousands of dollars worth of baby items. We were going to pay you back, Megan said defensively. We just needed a few things for the baby, and we knew you wouldn't miss the money with your big accounting salary. Whether I would miss the money is irrelevant, I replied. Using someone else's credit card without permission is fraud. And it's particularly troubling that you did it while also taking over my bedroom and trying to claim partial ownership of my house. My father stood up, his face red with anger. I don't recognize you anymore, Darlene. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I interrupted, surprising even myself with my boldness. You didn't help me pay for college. You didn't help me buy this house. You've consistently favored Travis over me since we were children. And now you're trying to take credit for my achievements, while simultaneously trying to take them away from me. We raised you, my mother exclaimed. We put a roof over your head and food on the table. That's called doing the bare minimum required of parents, I countered. And I'm grateful for it. But it doesn't entitle you to my house, my bedroom, or my credit card. 20 years later, the argument continued, growing increasingly heated. At one point, Travis suggested that since I was single with no children, I didn't need as much space or privacy as they did. My relationship status and reproductive choices have nothing to do with my right to my own property, I said firmly. The fact that you think they do shows how little respect you have for me as an individual. We're just trying to be practical, my father argued. Travis and Megan are starting a family. They need support. You're established and successful. I am established and successful because I worked hard to get here, I replied. And I'm happy to support Travis and Megan in reasonable ways, but not by giving up my home, my privacy, or my financial security. As the confrontation dragged on, I noticed something that hadn't been immediately apparent. None of them had denied using my credit card without permission, taking over my bedroom without consent, or trying to claim ownership of my house. They simply felt entitled to do those things, and were angry that I was pushing back. Finally, I'd had enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady despite my internal turmoil. Travis and Megan have 30 days to find alternative housing, as legally required. During that time, they will return to the guest room and restore my bedroom to its original condition. They will repay every cent of the unauthorized credit card charges, and all of you will respect my boundaries going forward, or we will have no relationship at all. The ultimatum hung in the air. My mother was the first to respond. If you do this, if you evict your own brother and his pregnant fiancée, you're no longer part of this family, she said coldly. We raised you better than this selfishness. The threat would have devastated me once, but now I recognized it for what it was, another manipulation tactic. If your definition of family requires me to surrender my boundaries, my property, and my self-respect, then perhaps I'm better off without that kind of family, I replied quietly. My father scoffed. Always the dramatic one. Fine, have it your way. But don't come crying to us when you're all alone with your big empty house and no one to share it with. They left shortly after my parents, promising to handle the situation, which only reinforced my decision to protect myself legally. Once they were gone, I stood in my living room, a space that no longer felt entirely like mine, and allowed myself to cry for the first time since this ordeal began. The next day I received a text message from Travis' mom and Dad say, "You don't need to worry about the 30 days. They're handling everything." Suspicious, I reached out to Mark immediately. What does handling everything likely mean in this context? Nothing good, he replied grimly. I'd be concerned they're planning to move more things in rather than out, or trying to establish some sort of claim on the property. Have you changed all the locks yet? I hadn't, having only changed the front and back door locks. That afternoon I had a locksmith replace every lock in the house and install a more comprehensive security system. I also took the day off to document the current state of my home, photographing each room carefully in case further damage occurred. As I was finishing, I received a call from a relative I rarely spoke with, my cousin Natalie, who lived in another state. Darlene, I just wanted to check if everything's okay. I saw Uncle Robert's Facebook post about the family dispute, and it seemed concerning. What post? I asked immediately, logging onto my computer. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. My father had written a lengthy public post describing how his ungrateful daughter was evicting her pregnant sister-in-law and tearing the family apart over material possessions. He claimed they had always supported both children equally, but that I had become materialistic and cold due to my corporate job. The post ended with a plea for prayers for our family during this difficult time, implying that I was experiencing some sort of moral or mental health crisis. The comments were filled with relatives and family friends expressing shock at my alleged behavior, offering support to my parents and Travis, and suggesting various interventions to help me see reason. Not a single comment questioned my father's version of events, or considered that there might be another side to the story. That's not what happened at all, I told Natalie, my voice shaking. They tried to take over my house, the house I bought and pay for myself. Travis and Megan used my credit card without permission while I was out of town. I'm not evicting them without cause. I figured there was more to the story, Natalie said. Uncle Robert has always had a knack for spinning narratives that make him look like the victim. After our call, I sat staring at my father's post, debating whether to respond publicly or let it go. In the end, I opted for a simple, factual comment. There are two sides to every story, and this post does not accurately represent the situation. I have documented evidence of boundaries being crossed and financial impropriety, which I'm addressing through appropriate channels. I would appreciate privacy during this difficult time. I then contacted Mark again, forwarding screenshots of my father's post. Does this constitute defamation? I asked. It's in a gray area, Mark admitted. He's presenting his opinion of the situation, albeit a highly distorted one, rather than making provably false statements of fact. We could pursue it, but it might not be worth the additional family drama. I agreed reluctantly, deciding to focus on the immediate issue of reclaiming my home. But my father's public post had made one thing crystal clear. My family was willing to destroy my reputation, rather than acknowledge their own inappropriate behavior. They would rather paint me as unstable, selfish, and materialistic than admit they had tried to take advantage of me. That night, as I tried to sleep in my cramped office-turned-bedroom, I heard Travis and Megan coming in late, laughing loudly as if deliberately trying to disturb me. The sound of something breaking, followed by more laughter and a dismissive "oops," confirmed my suspicion that they were now actively trying to make me uncomfortable in my own home. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing that this conflict had moved beyond a misunderstanding or even a disagreement about boundaries. This had become a power struggle with my family, united in their determination to break me down and force me to submit to their demands, just as they had throughout my childhood, when they insisted Travis's needs always came first. But I wasn't a child anymore, desperate for approval and willing to sacrifice my own well-being to earn it. I was an adult who had built a life through hard work and determination, and I would not allow anyone, not even family, to take that away from me. The next 2 weeks were a war of attrition. Travis and Megan technically moved back to the guest room as required by the eviction notice, but they made living with them as difficult as possible. They played music at all hours, left messes throughout the house, and made snide comments whenever we crossed paths. My parents called, constantly alternating between guilt trips and angry tirades. I tried one last approach, meeting my parents for lunch at a neutral location to explain my perspective calmly and rationally. I chose a quiet cafe near their home, hoping the public setting would encourage civility. I want you to understand why I've taken these steps I began after we'd ordered. This isn't about not wanting to help Travis. It's about having my boundaries repeatedly violated. My mother sighed dramatically. Boundaries. Boundaries. You and your generation are so obsessed with this concept. In our day, family just helped each other without all these conditions and rules. I was willing to help, I reminded her. I agreed to let Travis and Megan stay in the guest room temporarily. They're the ones who broke our agreement by taking over my bedroom while I was away and using my credit card without permission. They made a mistake, my father said, dismissively. Young couples do that sometimes. You're making a federal case out of a little family misunderstanding. Credit card fraud isn't a little misunderstanding, I countered. And neither is trying to take over someone's home. My mother reached across the table, clasping my hand in what seemed like a genuine moment of connection. Darlene, honey, we understand you're proud of your house. But wouldn't it make more sense for Travis and Megan to use it long-term? They're starting a family while you're focused on your career. We thought maybe you could sign a portion of it over to Travis as his inheritance early. I pulled my hand away, stunned by what she was suggesting. You want me to give Travis part ownership of the house I bought? The house he tried to take over without permission. It would solve everything, my father added eagerly. The house could officially be a family property. You could keep living there, of course, but Travis and Megan would have the master suite, and when the baby comes, they could use the office as a nursery. It's a win-win. I stared at them, finally understanding the depth of their entitlement. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? You never intended for this to be a temporary arrangement. You were planning for them to permanently take over my house. Not take over, my mother corrected quickly. Share. Family shares. And honestly, Darlene, it's not like you've ever been particularly family-oriented. You're always working, always focused on your career and your independence. Travis is different. He understands the importance of family bonds. The implication was clear: my success and self-sufficiency were being held against me while Travis's dependence was being rewarded. I was less deserving of support or consideration because I had worked hard to become independent. I need to be clear, I said firmly. I will not be signing over any portion of my house to Travis now or ever. It's not negotiable. My father's expression hardened. Then I don't see how we move forward as a family. You're choosing material possessions over your brother's well-being. No, I corrected him. I'm choosing self-respect over being exploited. There's a difference. The lunch ended soon after with no resolution and an even deeper divide between us. As I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The conversation had confirmed what I had been reluctant to fully acknowledge: my parents would never see me as an individual deserving of respect and autonomy. In their eyes, I would always be a resource to be tapped for Travis's benefit. When I arrived home, I discovered yet another boundary violation. Travis and Megan had rearranged my garden, digging up several of my carefully tended perennial beds to make space for a hot tub. The stone pathway I had laid by hand the previous summer was partially destroyed, and several of my favorite plants lay wilting in the sun, carelessly uprooted. I found them in the kitchen, looking completely unconcerned. What have you done to my garden? I demanded. Just making some improvements, Travis said casually. This backyard has so much wasted potential. Megan and I thought a hot tub would be perfect for relaxing after the baby comes. Don't worry, we've already ordered it. It arrives next week. You ordered a hot tub for my house without asking me. Each question raised my voice another notch. Technically, Mom and Dad ordered it. Megan clarified as if that made it better. A baby shower gift for us. I closed my eyes, trying to maintain my composure. Cancel it. Immediately. You are not installing a hot tub in my yard. Especially not after destroying my garden to make space for it. Too late, Travis shrugged. Non-refundable deposit. And honestly, Darlene, it's just some flowers. You can plant more somewhere else. Just some flowers. The garden I had spent 3 summers creating the plants I had carefully selected and tended the stone path I had laid. Piece by piece, all dismissed as unimportant compared to their desire for a hot tub they hadn't even purchased themselves. That evening, I called my Aunt Susan again, seeking perspective from someone who understood my family dynamics but wasn't directly involved in the current conflict. "I'm not surprised," she said after I described the garden incident and the lunch with my parents. "This is exactly how they've always operated. Your father did the same thing to me when we were younger. Appropriating my things, dismissing my efforts, expecting me to sacrifice for him." "How did you handle it?" I asked. "Not well at first," she admitted. "I tried to please them to earn their approval by giving in. It took me years to realize that no amount of sacrifice would ever be enough, because the goalpost keeps moving. Eventually, I had to create distance to preserve my own sanity." "Distance," I repeated. "You mean, like, cutting them off?" "I mean establishing and enforcing boundaries," she clarified, "which sometimes requires stepping back when those boundaries aren't respected. It's not about punishment or revenge. It's about protecting yourself from ongoing harm." After our conversation, I sat in my damaged garden watching the sunset and contemplating my aunt's words. The pattern was clear: no matter how much I gave, my family would always expect more. No sacrifice would ever be sufficient. No boundary would ever be respected, because they fundamentally did not see me as having the right to set boundaries in the first place. The next morning, I had an appointment with my therapist, Dr. Lena Harris, whom I had been seeing on and off for years to work through my family-related anxiety. I gave her a detailed update on the situation. "What you're describing sounds like a form of emotional abuse," she said after listening carefully. "Your achievements are minimized, your boundaries are violated, and when you assert yourself, you're made to feel guilty or selfish." "But they're my family," I said weakly. "Aren't we supposed to support each other?" "Support should be mutual and respectful," Dr. Harris pointed out. "What they're asking isn't support, it's submission. They want you to sacrifice your needs, your space, even your financial security, while offering nothing in return except continued relationship with them, which they use as leverage to control you." "So what do I do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" she countered. "Setting aside what you think you should do, or what others expect, what outcome would make you feel safe and respected?" The question was surprisingly difficult to answer. I had spent so much of my life considering others' needs before my own, that identifying my own desires felt almost foreign. But as I sat with the question, the answer became clear. "I want my house back," I said finally. "I want to live in peace in the home I worked so hard to create, without constantly defending my right to exist there. I want relationships based on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt." Dr. Harris nodded. "Those are reasonable wants. The question now is what steps you need to take to achieve them." That evening, I returned home to find my living room in disarray. Travis had apparently hosted some kind of gathering while I was at work, and there were empty beer bottles, food containers, and cigarette burns on my coffee table. One of my favorite photographs, a black and white print I had purchased on my first solo vacation, lay broken on the floor, its frame shattered. When confronted, Travis was dismissive. "It was just a few friends celebrating our engagement. Stop being so uptight." "Your friends damaged my property," I pointed out. "It's just stuff," he replied with a shrug. "You can buy another picture." It's not like it was important, but it was important to me. And his casual dismissal of something I valued was the final confirmation that this situation was beyond repair. My family would never respect my home, my belongings, or me, because they simply did not view my rights and feelings as valid. That night I barely slept, but by morning I had reached a decision. I called Mark and asked him to expedite the eviction process in any way legally possible. I also requested a formal restraining order against my parents, preventing them from entering my property without explicit written invitation. "Are you sure about this?" Mark asked. "A restraining order against your parents is a significant step." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "They've shown repeatedly that they don't respect my boundaries. Legal consequences seem to be the only language they might understand." Next, I called a locksmith to change the locks yet again and upgrade the security system further. I scheduled a professional cleaning service for the day, after the eviction would be completed. I even contacted a landscaper to help restore my garden once Travis and Megan were gone. Each of these actions was painful but necessary. I was not just reclaiming my physical space, I was reclaiming my autonomy, my right to set boundaries and my self-respect. The final betrayal came 2 days later, when I overheard Travis on the phone in the guest room door ajar. "Yeah, Mom, we're still here for now," he was saying. "The lawyer says she can't force us out before the 30 days are up." "No, I don't think she knows you guys are planning to move in too." "Right, once the baby comes, you can help with childcare. She'll have to get over it eventually." I stood frozen in the hallway, processing what I'd just heard. Not only had Travis and Megan never intended their stay to be temporary, but my parents were planning to move in as well, all without my knowledge or consent. They had been coordinating behind my back, making plans for my home while deliberately keeping me in the dark. I didn't confront Travis immediately. Instead, I gathered evidence recording his subsequent phone calls legal in my state with one-party consent, taking screenshots of text messages left visible on his unlocked phone when he left it charging, documenting the damage to my time, property with dated photographs. When everything was in place, I contacted a security company and arranged for a representative to be present during the eviction, which had been expedited due to the documented property damage and unauthorized credit card use. The day of reckoning arrived exactly 1 week later. With the security representative, a police officer present due to the restraining order, and Mark at my side, I presented Travis and Megan with the final eviction notice and evidence of the restraining order against my parents. "You have 2 hours to collect your essential belongings," Mark explained professionally. "The rest can be retrieved at a scheduled time in the presence of the security service. Any damage to the property during your departure will result in additional legal action." Travis was furious, alternating between threats and attempts at emotional manipulation. "You're really throwing your pregnant sister-in-law out. What kind of monster are you?" I remained calm, no longer susceptible to the guilt tactics that had controlled me for so long. "You had the opportunity to stay here respectfully, and you chose to violate every boundary instead. These are the consequences of those choices." Megan tried a different approach. "Darlene, please, we have nowhere to go on such short notice. Can't we work something out?" "You've had 30 days notice," I reminded her. "And according to Travis's conversation with my mother, which I overheard, you've been planning for my parents to move in too. You've been lying to me from the beginning." Their expressions confirmed what I already knew. They had never respected me or my home. They had viewed me solely as a resource to be exploited, a stepping stone to achieving their own goals at my expense. When my parents arrived, having been called by Travis despite the restraining order, the police officer stepped forward to intercept them. "This is ridiculous," my father blustered. "We're her parents. She can't keep us out of the family home." "It's not the family home," the officer stated, reviewing the property records Mark had provided. "The house belongs solely to Miss Mitchell, and there is a valid restraining order prohibiting you from entering the property." Watching my family being escorted away was one of the most painful experiences of my life. Not because I regretted my decision, but because it represented the final acknowledgement that the loving, supportive family I had always longed for did not exist. The people who should have been my greatest advocates had instead been my most persistent underminers. As the security representative supervised Travis and Megan collecting their belongings, I sat in my garden, or what remained of it, and allowed myself to fully feel the grief of that realization. I was mourning not just the family I had, but the family I had always wished they could be. In the weeks that followed the eviction, I focused on reclaiming my space, both physical and emotional. The professional cleaning service removed every trace of Travis and Megan's presence, from the cigarette burns on my furniture to the smudges on the walls where they had hung their artwork without permission. I repainted my bedroom in a soothing new color, replaced damaged items, and gradually restored my home to a sanctuary that reflected my taste and provided the peace I craved. The landscaper helped salvage what he could of my garden, replanting the uprooted perennials that had survived and suggesting new varieties to fill the gaps. Together we designed a small meditation area where the hot tub would have gone a peaceful corner with a comfortable bench surrounded by lavender and rosemary. Whenever I sat there breathing in the herbal scent and listening to the wind chimes I had hung nearby, I was reminded that healing was possible, that damaged things could be restored, and even made more beautiful through the process of repair. On the legal front, Mark helped me navigate the aftermath of the eviction. Travis and Megan attempted to challenge it, claiming I had verbally agreed to a different arrangement, but the documentation I had gathered proved otherwise. The restraining order against my parents remained in place, though I specified it could be reviewed after 6 months, if they demonstrated a willingness to respect boundaries. The financial aspects were more complicated. The credit card company reversed the fraudulent charges, but Travis and Megan refused to reimburse me for the property damage they had caused. After some consideration, I decided not to pursue further legal action for the damages, not because they didn't deserve consequences, but because continuing the conflict would keep me tethered to the toxic dynamics I was trying to escape. Sometimes the cheapest way to pay for something is with money, Mark advised when I consulted him about my decision. Yes, you could take them to small claims court and probably win. But at what cost to your mental health and healing process? He was right. Replacing my broken possessions cost money, but maintaining a legal battle against my family would cost something far more valuable: the peace and closure I was working so hard to achieve. The social fallout was perhaps the most difficult aspect to navigate. My father's misleading social media posts had created a narrative in which I was the villain, the cold-hearted sister who had thrown her pregnant sister-in-law onto the street out of selfish materialism. Some relatives and family friends took this version at face value, sending me messages ranging from gently concerned to openly hostile. I didn't try to correct each misconception individually; that would have been exhausting and ultimately futile. Instead, I focused on maintaining connections with the few relatives who had reached out with genuine questions rather than accusations. Aunt Susan became a particularly important ally, having experienced similar treatment from my father in the past. The truth has a way of revealing itself over time, she reassured me during one of our weekly phone calls. People who really care about you will eventually see the pattern. The ones who don't, well, perhaps they're not people you need in your life anyway. 6 months after the eviction, I received an unexpected email from my cousin Natalie, who had initially contacted me about my father's Facebook post. She was visiting my city for a conference and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious, but cautious. "I owe you an apology," she said after we had settled at a quiet table in my favorite cafe. "I didn't fully understand the situation when we last spoke, and I should have been more supportive." "You were more supportive than most," I assured her. "You at least asked for my side of the story." Natalie shook her head. "Not just that. I should have recognized the pattern earlier. Uncle Robert did almost the exact same thing to my mom. When I was a teenager, tried to move my cousin into her house without permission. Claimed it was family property, even though she owned it outright. I witnessed it firsthand, but somehow didn't make the connection when it happened to you." Her revelation was both validating and disturbing. The pattern of behavior wasn't unique to my situation. It was a deeply ingrained family dynamic that had been playing out for generations. "Have you heard from them recently?" Natalie asked carefully. I shook my head. "Not directly. Travis sent a birth announcement when the baby was born 3 months ago. My parents have tried to use mutual friends as intermediaries, suggesting I should put the past behind us now that I'm an aunt. But none of them have acknowledged what they did or apologized." "That sounds about right," Natalie sighed. "Acknowledgement would require taking responsibility, which has never been their strong suit." After our meeting, I reflected on how much had changed in those 6 months, not just in my circumstances, but in my perspective. I no longer felt the desperate need for my parents' approval that had defined so much of my life. I no longer measured my worth by their validation or lack thereof. I had built a community of supportive friends and colleagues who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Through my therapist's recommendation, I joined a support group for adult children of manipulative parents. The stories shared in that safe space helped me recognize that what I had experienced wasn't normal or acceptable, and that establishing boundaries wasn't selfish. It was essential for emotional health. My experience also led me to volunteer with a local nonprofit that helped first-time homebuyers navigate the complex process of purchasing property. Many of the clients were women like me, working to establish independence and security through homeownership. Sharing the knowledge I had gained through my own journey, both practical and emotional, gave purpose to the pain I had experienced. 1 year after the eviction, I hosted a housewarming party, a symbolic reclaiming of my space as truly mine. I invited friends who had supported me through the difficult year, colleagues who had become friends, members of my support group, who understood the significance of the celebration, and the few relatives like Aunt Susan and Natalie who had demonstrated respect for my boundaries. As we gathered in my restored garden, raising glasses to new beginnings, Jamie pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "I know how hard this year has been, but look at what you've created. Not just this beautiful home, but a life filled with people who genuinely care about you." She was right. The path to this moment had been painful, but it had led me to a place of authentic connection and self-respect I might never have found otherwise. I had learned that real family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect, support, and love that doesn't come with conditions or costs. The most profound lesson I had learned was that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most, not because they deserve those boundaries less, but because they often resist them more. Standing firm in the face of that resistance requires courage, especially when it means risking relationships that, however problematic, have been fundamental to our sense of identity and belonging. But I had also learned that creating healthy boundaries isn't about building walls, it's about defining where I end and others begin, about claiming my right to exist as a separate person with valid needs and feelings. Far from being selfish, this clarity is the foundation of authentic relationship, the soil in which genuine connection can grow. As the evening wound down and my guests began to depart, I stood in the doorway of my home. Truly, my home now in a deeper sense than mere ownership, and felt a peace I had never known before. The house around me wasn't just a structure of wood and stone. It was a physical manifestation of my journey from someone who sought worth through others' approval to someone who recognized her inherent value and right to self-determination. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear. I still had moments of doubt and sadness about the family relationships that remained broken, but I no longer felt defined by those breaks or compelled to heal them at the cost of my own well-being. I had found a different kind of wholeness, not the perfect family I had always longed for, but the perfect recognition that I was enough just as I was. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? What helped you stay strong when they pushed back against your limits? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations, and sharing with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to honor your own boundaries, whatever they may be.